Some of you may have noticed in Windows recently that a mysterious new folder appeared in the root of your C drive called inetpub. And if you're like me, you saw it, looked in it, and saw that it was truly empty, no hidden files or anything, and promptly deleted it, assuming it was just a leftover remnant from some update or app installation, something like that. But it turns out that folder was actually kind of important. And if you deleted it like me, no, you can't just recreate it yourself by making a folder with the same name. You see, Windows itself actually created that folder in an update a couple weeks ago as part of patching a certain security vulnerability. I'll get into how that works in a minute, but like I said, you can't simply just recreate the folder by right-clicking and hitting new folder because it has special permissions on the back end that would not be recreated if you did that, and it wouldn't serve its same purpose. Of course, later I will show you some steps that Microsoft has given that you can use to recreate it properly if you did happen to delete it. And funny enough, actually it turns out the way Microsoft implemented this patch may have inadvertently caused a second vulnerability for people who don't do the patch. I'll get to that later. Anyway, more about the folder. Microsoft describes this janky patch, I would call it. It feels more like a workaround. They described it in a security bulletin. They did not go into many details about exactly what vulnerability it addresses because they don't want to give hackers a chance to immediately start using it before people have a chance to install the update. However, they do describe the vulnerability as, quote, an improper link resolution before file access. I can explain a little bit more about what that might mean in a minute, but they do explicitly state later, after installing the updates listed in the security updates table for your operating system, a new system drive inetpub folder will be created on your device. This folder should not be deleted regardless of whether you have the Internet Information Services active on your target device. This behavior is part of changes that increase protection and does not require any action, blah, blah, blah. Now, the Internet Information Services thing they mention is an optional feature in Windows that can be enabled, and that is what normally adds that folder to that location. That's why they mention it there. So even if you don't have that enabled, the update still is meant to add that there. Though I must say that the way Microsoft did this is really the dumbest way I can imagine and is just going to cause more confusion. They should have at least made the folder hidden, maybe even with the system file attribute to make it even more hidden, just so people wouldn't notice it. Right now, it just looks like one of the other million junk folders that gets left over by who knows how many programs and installers, especially from the fact that it's completely empty. It's practically just asking to be deleted. And I bet a lot of people are also going to see what it is, Google it, realize they don't have that feature installed, and just say, oh, well, I guess I don't need it, and then delete it anyway. Now, like I said, if you deleted the folder like me, you cannot simply right-click and hit new folder and recreate it. That won't work because it has special permissions. Like, for example, if you go into the Windows Explorer and enable the owner column, with the proper one, you would notice that it is owned by the system, and there's other stuff as well behind the scenes. And if you just recreate it yourself, it would show as being owned by you. However, hope is not lost. The first thing that would be the easiest that you can do is look in your recycle bin. If you didn't empty the recycle bin since then it should still be in there, and if you restore it, it should still have the same permissions and all that stuff and still work. Otherwise, if you can't find it in the recycle bin or you deleted it permanently, Microsoft apparently told reporters for the website Windows Latest that one option you can do is to actually enable that optional feature in the Windows settings. So you just search the start menu for turn Windows features on and off, temporarily turn on the one for Internet Information Services. When I did it, it immediately created the inetpub folder. And then after it does that, you can just turn the feature back off. And while doing it this way will add other stuff into the folder, it's not going to be empty. If you restart after disabling it, most of that stuff goes away. It'll leave some other log files and stuff in there, but I think you could just delete those too. Really, it just matters that the top level folder exists. However, something else recently arose that just makes the whole story even dumber. It turns out that in patching this, Microsoft kind of introduced a new vulnerability. There's one security researcher who found out that if you haven't had this patch applied yet, and you create a symlink junction, it's like sort of like a shortcut to any file and call it inetpub, then Windows Update will fail to run, which effectively can block your system from getting future Windows updates. Now, to be clear, the inetpub folder from the Windows update is not what causes this vulnerability. It's actually the opposite. If you don't have that folder yet, you haven't run Windows updates, that is when you're susceptible to this symlink thing. So you still need to have Windows let it create that folder. That's still the solution to all of it. But I did test it out myself. I created a symlink junction to Notepad, like the example, and normally junctions are supposed to be from a folder to another folder, but I guess because if you do it to a file, it makes the Windows update spaz out, and then it causes an error that says directory name is invalid. Microsoft did respond to this and say, all right, we'll fix it eventually. And admittedly, this is probably not a very likely thing that's going to be exploited, but still good to know. Now, going back to what the actual folder patch thing does, like I said, there is limited information about what the vulnerability is. Apparently, the vulnerability is because of the Windows update stack, the software behind the scenes that does the updating. It must look for that inetpub folder regardless of whether you have the feature enabled or not. And I guess if you don't have the feature enabled, then there's potential for malware to create it and then somehow get Windows Update to do something with the stuff in it, or maybe they could use a symlink that goes to another folder and run code. That's why the vulnerability is described as improper link resolution. And since the Windows Update obviously runs with like the highest level permissions, and you can create a folder in the C drive just as a regular user, apparently you can trick the Windows Update into doing stuff from the user level. However, having the Windows itself with the system permissions create that folder means that a malware at the user level wouldn't be able to manipulate it and then do all those bad things. So that's why it's important to have Windows itself create the folder with those permissions so that malware can't manipulate it and do the vulnerability again. Anyway, the summary of the story is if you deleted it, you better recreate it. If you haven't updated Windows and you haven't seen it yet, just be aware if it shows up. If it does annoy you that it's there, you can hide it. It shouldn't mess with anything. It just needs to exist. And I would be curious how many of you even noticed it, or maybe you did delete it like me. We could talk about that down in the comments. And if you did find the video helpful and enjoyed it, be sure to give it a big giant thumbs up. And if you want to subscribe, I try to make videos about twice a week, so it should be worth it. If you want to keep watching, the next video I'd recommend is where I talk about a Gmail bug that's 10 years old that I found out the cause of, and hopefully Google will fix it now. I'll put that link right there you can click on. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.